Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I'm going to show you a bit more work that's being done on the next update of Afterglow. I think today we're focusing on some product viz type stuff, so let's just take a look. So what we might recognize here is one of these studio environments that's included in Afterglow. If you don't know, if you're new here, Afterglow is an asset library product of mine, which includes various studio environments, studio cages, which are kind of more minimal light setups, HDRIs, light projection textures. So what I mean by that is here in this studio environment, I can have a gradient that controls the light output of this floor LED panel, but I can also pass an image texture into it. So Afterglow includes like a whole collection of images to do that across various types of studio environments. But there's much more to the product than just that. I recommend watching the original crash course if you are interested. And in a recent video, I showed some extra things I was working on, things like display case type things, visible lighting highlights, and more. Right now, I've been experimenting with product visualization type demos, which are effectively collection assets, which are like object platforms where you could put like products to visualize, but their position and their design is built entirely with various studio environments in mind. So we see this basic one here. We've got like this wavy pattern and a couple of sphere objects, which you could imagine being substituted for something like, a perfume bottle. As I swap this out for different studio environments, we're going to get slightly different lighting profiles and reflections, which are based on what's actually happening in the scene. So we see here in studio number 2, we have this triangle's light pattern above, and we're getting the reflection of that. I wanted to design them in this way because it makes everything completely interchangeable with the pre-existing content of the package. Now, even in this platform, I've got a couple of emissive lights which don't need to be used. You can use them if you want, and even without a studio cage, it's going to give you an interesting result, or studio environment, I should say. But if I disable those and then rely entirely on the studio environments, then we can see the effect that has. We've got anything from like dark, simple, muted, and moody to something sharper, brighter, with more reflection. There's really an insane amount of like customization, and just to drive that home, let me try Studio 6, which has this floor lighting gradient that we saw earlier. If I do something as simple as moving the lighting handle so it exposes more of the room, then you see we get this forceful lighting coming from underneath, which is bouncing through, and it changes something from a super moody, a muted scene, a little bit dark, a little bit mysterious, to something that's quite bright and clean, medical maybe, or clinical, and it looks really nice. So with minimum effort, there's maximum variety. We can even add to that as well, so like a little bit of density can kind of just fade out the background a little bit. Great variety. Now, if I change to a different kind of platform, you may also notice that in the platform presets that there are different cameras. Now, I'm still working on this, so the different types of platform presets will have their own names and they'll be laid out completely differently. So what you're seeing is an in development section. But if I go for one completely different, I'm going to select one of the appropriate cameras and move to it. So you can obviously see that this looks quite different. So if I scrub back the lighting gradient on that and maybe swap to a different studio, then we're getting a different visual. I can remove the volume density, make it a bit faster to render. If I go for a camera position that can see the background, maybe this one, if you are in a studio environment, sometimes you don't want to be able to see the harsh corner there where the wall meets the floor. That's not a problem for every environment. For example, Studio 7 has this kind of gradation of the geometry around the edges, which basically kind of subverts that issue. But if you are in an environment that does have a harsh wall like that, then a tiny bit of volume density is actually a really good way to fade that out. Of course, you can increase it to whatever value you like. Again, the interesting reflection complexity there is based entirely on the image texture being passed to the emission of the ceiling light. And that can be anything. So maybe I'll take another one of the new ceiling textures, which will also be available in Afterglow version 2, because version 2 is the version I'm working on. If I plug this other one in, this one called Straight Lines Random Thin, as you can see, it's just a collection of straight lines going across the ceiling. You can actually see what it looks like here. And again, moving away from our actual camera position, that's obviously one of the things I love about doing real physical environment lighting is, isn't this such a cool scene? Let me turn off the volume to make that a bit easier. You can put anything in here and make it look great. It's basically like a living HDRI, even with that volume off now. Look how crisp that is. I love experimenting with all this type of stuff. Let's jump to another platform. The first one, basically one of the most basic ones, the first test. What I'm trying to do is, with every kind of platform I've got, from like simple to more complex ones, I'm trying to give you some like camera positions that feel sensible for them. Let's try Doodle as a ceiling light texture as well. There's more surface area on that one. Now, of all the things I've shown you in the recent video, so this one and the last one in Afterglow, it might be the case that not every single thing makes its way into version 2, because I showed the display case recently as well. Let's just go to that quickly. So I had done a test of of building emissive light powered display cases, and I wanted to build more realistic ones. It might be the case that I focus more on the product viz templates for version 2 and then move this one to like a later version, just given that it's a slightly more limited use case and there's kind of more to do with it. It depends. And I kind of feel like product viz is something people might want a bit more, and I might find it more useful because I'm kind of interested in opening up some freelance services at some point. So it just kind of depends. I also alluded to experimenting with highlight structures. What I'm thinking is that working on the product platform templates, things like this, is giving me an opportunity to learn what kinds of structures would be like functionally useful for like lighting and reflections, as we can see there. So again, it might be the case that maybe I make some more complex product things for one update and then move that back as things have been learned, or not move it back, but do more complex things for the products and then do a simplified version of the highlight tools and even the display cases. Maybe I just start by giving you the simple things and then make the mental note to do more complexity as the versions go on. Really, I don't like the idea of withholding things for you, so I might do that. Just make mental notes for everything that gets added to an update and say, hey, I can expand upon that in the future. Now, before we close this up, I made a few notes about things which look cool. Studio environment free, widen the last handle, okay, with platform 1. So let's go for platform 1. See, sometimes I make notes to myself, and then volume density up slightly. So the density helps to hide the background. Maybe I'll do that up a tiny bit more. I think the reason why I made this mental note was just to show simplicity, I guess, in that when people get Afterglow as a product, they look at these studio environments and they sometimes think, wow, there's a lot you can do there, but is it overly stylized? Is it too complex? Do I really need all of this? That's one of the questions. And I think that's also represented in the last video where I showed a comment of someone asking just for a sister product, which is a smaller HDRI pack only, which I can do. In some of your projects, you may only need an HDRI. I love working in physical spaces like this because it's basically the maximum power. But things are as complex or as simple as you want to make them. So depending on your angle and what you're doing, Afterglow is fully capable of just basic simplicity to suit your needs and requirements. Let me move this light handle to the other side. Cool. Got a little bit of shadowing under there. I kind of prefer that. I like that. Let's see what happens if we take the emissive ring and change the color a bit. Nice. So we get a bit of highlight there. Nice bit of blue. So it really is just so easy to modify and jump between all different types of stylings, and then maybe change the platform, make it dark instead, maybe more metallic and or reflective. I've got some normal information plugged in at the moment that gives it a little bit of texture. Don't need that if you don't want it. Nice and clean. So I'll keep working on it and I will let you know when there's more to come. Actually really like that. But I don't want to disturb my default settings too much. So you just watched how I made that effect happen, right? I might come back to it myself. All right, cool. Thanks for watching. Like I said, I'll let you know when there's updates. If you want to stay updated on my work, you can, subscribe, pick up the product if you like. That's probably the best way to support me. You will get this update for free as well if you're a pre-existing owner of Afterglow. If you sign up to my Patreon for free or paid, you should get monthly updates, roughly monthly. Afterglow is available on both Gumroad and Superhive. So if you are at all interested in lighting for Blender, I recommend you check it out. If you made it this far through the video, put a light bulb related emoji in the comments so I can see if you made it this far. Have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you next time.